46, Pesachim 46. So it's, the Baraisa said, V'chein le'inyan tumah. This is regarding, we said that by dough that's in the crack of a kli, it depends on the shear, whether it's a certain size or not. But by tumah, we said no, it has to do with whether the person cares whether the dough is there or not, whether he's makpid, whether it would be a chatzitz or not. And it said v'chein le'inyan tumah, but the Gemara is a question, what do you mean v'chein le'inyan tumah? It has nothing to do with size. How could you say v'chein le'inyan tumah? So Ela Amar Abaya says v'chein le'inyan siruf tumah b'pesach. That combining for tumah on Pesach will be based on size, like when we said that's what Uvishar Yemos Hashana Ikaplukta, and that's going to be different non-Pesach, where there it has to do with whether a person is makpid or not. Like Hechidami, what does that mean? Kigon de Ikapachos Mikabeitza Ochlin. You have less than, remember, normally food, to become tameh, you have to have at least a kibetza, an egg volume worth of food in order to be makabel p'tumah. So you have less than that. V'nogu b'hai botzeg. And that food touched the dough that is sitting in the crack in a kli. So, b'pesach the isur choshev. So, on Pesach, where since this dough creates an isser, even though it's a small shear, right? It's not kibetza. Because a kazayas is already enough chametz to make you isser chametz. Like we said before, it's not. If it's a kazayis, it's not bottled to the kli. So since regarding Pesach, it's considered choshev, it's mitzdaref to the pachos mikabetza oichlin in order to make it tameh. But bishar yemos hashana, when it's not Pesach, to be kedetaya milsa, it has nothing to do with the shear. In makpid alav mitzdaref, if he is makpid that it not be part of the kli, then it's food, and therefore it's mitzaref to the other food. But if he really wants this dough to sit in the crack in the kli, he doesn't want, and then it's not mitzaref. So that's the way Abaya says v'chein linyan tumah. So maskif l'rava miktani mitzaref. It says v'hachoitze it's ktani. It's not talking about mitzarefus, it's talking about it serving as a chatzitza by the case of tumah. So your pshat is not correct. Ela Amar Rava, v'chein la'alois tahara la'areva. The similarity in the seifa regarding shear has to do with allowing the kli to get its tahara. What's this? Hechidami. Kigon de'itmi ha'chareva. This bowl became tameh. Uboy latvuli. And you have to be toivel in the mikveh. And you have this dough in there. But Pesach, the Isur Choshuv. So since Chametz Pesach is an Isur and therefore makes it important, its importance makes it a Chatzitza. And therefore the Tefillah would not work. V'lo sakal Tefillah. But B'shar Yemos Hashana, it has nothing, like if you have a, remember, the Bereishah said if you have a Kazayas, it's not bottled to the kli. If it's less than a kazayis, it's bottled to the kli. Why is that? Because by Pesach, a kazayis determines whether it's an isser or not, an isser choshev or not. That's what determines whether it serves as chatzitza. As opposed to b'shar yemos hashana, where b'kpeda tayim milsa, there we said it has to do with the owner of the kli. Does he care that the dough is there or not? If he doesn't want the dough to be there, then it's a choitzeitz. It serves as a chatzitza when you go in the mikvah. But if he wants it to be there in the crack, Hareu kareva. Okay, Masker Rav Papa. It still doesn't answer. Miktani v'chein linyan tahara. It says v'chein linyan tuma. Halinyan tuma ktani. And you're talking about tahara. Amar Rav Papa. V'chein linyan lahori tuma la reva. It works the difference between shir or hakpada regarding whether the kli can become tamei or not. Hey chidami. He goes sheretz by botzek. A sheretz touched the dough. Now, the Pesach, the Surei Chashuv, where once you have a kazayas, it creates an isser, makes it a chashivas. So choitzeitz. So who cares that the sheretz touched it? It didn't touch the kli, because this is a dvar chashuv, and it serves as a chatzitza. V'lo nachta latuma, the sheretz doesn't convey the tumah to the kli via the chametz. But b'shayim hashana, but in the rest of the year, not Pesach, it's nothing to do with the shear. The bikpeda taya milsa. It depends on whether the guy is happy with the clay being there or not, the dough being there. Im makpid alav. If he doesn't want the dough being there, then in a chanami it'll be a chatzitza between the sheretz and the kli. But im rotza b'kiyumo. But if the dough has now melded in the crack, and the guy's happy that it's there because it's fixing the kli, then it becomes part of the kli, and the sheretz touched the dough, it's like touching the kli. Areu kareva, and Rav Papa seems to have the final word. Mishnah. Botze kacheresh. Cheresh means a mute, someone who can't speak. So what do you mean a dough that can't speak? Meaning, we don't know the provenance of this dough. When was water added to it? We also don't see simonim yet clearly of chimutz. It becomes pale yellow, it becomes crusty. We don't see that yet. Now, im yesh kayotze bo shechmitz, let's say you have a dough nearby that is showing the signs of chimutz. And we know that you put water into both of these doughs at the same time. So the din is hareze osir. So then this silent dough that we don't know what's going on, we would treat it stringently. What if, says the Gemara, mein sham kiyotze b'ma'u? What if there isn't another dough that we can make this decision on? So how do we treat the dough? You know what? We have to count how much time went by since we added the water to the flour. If it takes the time that a person walks from Migdal Nuna to Tveria, which is a meal, right, which is a kilometer, then it would be chametz. The Gemara wants to know the name of meal. Why did you tell me? Why did you just say kadesh yelech meal? Why do you have to tell me to go from one place to another place? The meal. You know what? We're going to debate what is the meal. So you know what? Go to this place, Migdal Nunya, and go walk to Tveria, measure carefully. You know what? That defines the meal. It reminds me of the marathon, right? The Greek guy ran from Marathon to Athens, or Athens to Marathon, whatever it is. So that became the shear of a marathon. So the distance between, so that was a physical thing that they knew in times of the Mishnah what they were talking about. They knew where Migdal Nunya is. They knew where Tveria is. There's a debate about what the meal is. We'll go measure and we'll know what the meal is. By the way, the Shulchan Aruch says, Shiura shel hiluch mil, nechlechu adeos. Yesh oimrim shu shmona, some say it's 18 minutes. Yesh oimrim shu 24 minutes. Yesh oimrim shu esrim v'shtayim, 20, the gross is 22. Mokum she'efer noagu akol lamachmir li'in chometz b'pesach, keshir cotton shebehem, which is, the Maril said 18 minutes. So we had different shitas. Some said 18, some said 24, some said 22. We go by Pesach machmir and say that the period of time is 18 minutes. Amar Rav Shemed Lakish. Lagabol, this shear of mill is important for people making dough. litfila, davening. We're going to see how that is. Ulintilas yadayim, arba milin. The shear is our, what is this? So you're going to eat bread and you're on the road. And you need to wash. How much are you required to walk to get to Natilas Yadayim is arba milin. If it's more than arba milin, you're allowed to eat without Natilas Yadayim. And if you're working with dough and you've been hired by a householder to make dough and his kelim are tameh, Chachamim make you walk up till 4 mil to go put that kli in a mikveh before you start making dough in that kli. And Rashi says, "V'chelet tefila, ma'alech adam b'derech." Person's walking. Uva eit lalun lispala, and it's time to go to sleep and daven. Yesh beis haknesses lefanav barach achar b'mil. If there's a shul in front of him 4 mil, holech umispolo sham v'lan sham. He should continue on his derech and daven there and then sleep there. If it's more than that, he doesn't have to. He can sleep where he is. If he's destined to find water within 4 kilometers of where he's going, while he's walking forward, he can go there and wash his hands. He's required to. It's not 3, which is gabel tefillah. There's a 4th thing, which is ibud, the tanner business. You have hides that are soft. So as long as they're soft, if a sheretz falls on them, they're treated like meat and can be makabel tumah. But once you begin the tanning process, or you step on them, which is part of the tanning process, they become tohor. Because now they're hides, they're not basar. We'll see in a minute how much you have to walk on it to be considered tanning it. Now, chutzme or ha'adam, human skin always remains tameh. The kama kedei avoda, amravina, amraviana kedei hilach arba milin, same thing. The process of tanning is walking on these hides for 4 miles. Amrav Reb Chanina, the dinim we just learned, lo yishana lofanav. We don't make you go back 4 miles. You're walking from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. You're heading. So we say you have to go forward but to make you go back, we only make you go back. Let's say you realize, oh, you know what? I passed water, but you only make you go back a filu mil. If it's less than the kilometer, we tell you to go back. But if it's more, then we don't tell you to go back. But less than a mil, you do have to go back. Misha Tzarchlis, the Shulchan Aruch says, Or Chaim Tzadik Beis. Misha Tzarchlis Spal Vein Lo Mayim Lirchos. He has to daven, there's no water. Yelech Kadei Shir Bar Mili, he has to go. We're talking about 18 minutes, that's 72 minutes. Ad L'Ratzon, till he finds water. If he doesn't miss the time of tefillah. But if he misses the time of tefillah, it's going to take him longer, then he's allowed to daven without until Shaddai. Mishnah. Ketzad mafrishin challah betuma b'yontiv. How are we mafresh challah on Pesach, where the dough became? See, if the dough is tohor, and you're baking matzah on Pesach, you could be mafresh challah right? Very appropriate. We're now very familiar with challah. You can be mafresh challah tahora, give it to the kohen, and he can eat it. And we're not worried it's going to become chametz. The problem is, what if the dough is tameh? The kohen can't eat that. And he has to burn it. But he can't burn it. Rashi says, he can't bake it because it's not roy for achila to the kohen. It's tameh. Now, let's say keep it around until nightfall and burn it. It's going to become chametz. Give it to a dog or burn it. There's a gzeirat. Challah has become hegdish in a sense. You're not allowed to burn hegdish on yontif, so you're stuck. So ketzad mafrishin challah betuma b'yontif. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, you know what? Lo tikra lo shem ad sheteyafeh. Right. Normally, the lady separates the dough and she's makri shem. She says this is challah. So in this case, you shouldn't call it challah until you bake it. We learned you can give challah after you bake it. Now, once you bake it, it's not going to become chametz anymore. So it's not a problem. And then you could leave that chelek challah that was baked until motzei yontif, and then burn it, which is what you do with normal challah. Right? We burn it today because we can't give it to the kohanim because they're tameh. Sorry, Harold. Now, Ben Beseira Omer Tatil Betsoine. Ben Beseira says, you know what? Separate the challah before you bake it, but put the dough in cold water so it'll until motzei yontif, and it'll prevent it from becoming chametz. Amar of Yoshua lo zeh hu chametz shumizon alav vayirav vayimotzei. You know what? Once you separated the challah, it's not yours. Becomes hegdishes, and it's not yours, and therefore you're not over by your motzei. You separate it and you leave it until nightfall, and at nightfall you'll burn it. It became chametz, it becomes chametz, but you're not over by your motzei. Now, lema b'toivus hanoah kamiflagi. Toivus hanoah is the value. So when I separate challah, I can give it to any coin I want. I know Harold, and I am willing to pay somebody, or somebody might be willing to give me money to give the challah to Harold or to a family member. So there's value in the choice of who you're going to give your challah to. That's called toivus hanoah. The question is that toivus hanoah considered your mammon? Because the challah doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the kohen. But the bailam have the choice who to give it to. But is that considered mammon to the person who was mafresh the challah or not? Rabbi Eliezer sover toivus hanoah mammon. Rabbi Eliezer has, yes, it is considered money. And if it's considered like a personal asset, it becomes his. In a way, it's viewed as his. And then you have to be worried about bayir bayamotzi, that Rabbi Eliezer gave you an eitzah of bake it. While Rabbi Yeshua is not concerned because toivus hanoah ain't a mammon. It's not considered your personal asset, just because you have the choice who to give it to. And that's why Rabbi Yeshua said you're not worried about it because it's not yours. More says, lo, kulam asari toivus hanoah ain't a mammon. Everybody holds that this right you have to be paid some money to give it, it's not considered that it's really your mammon. Rather, b'hoyel kamiflagi. They're arguing in the principle of hoyel. What's the principle of hoyel? The Rabbi Eliezer Sofer, hoyel, the iboy itchilallah, mamoinu. So separating challah and say Arezu Chala is like when any neder that a person takes, in a sense. When you Arez Nazir or Harezu Shlamim. Well, we've learned that you can go to a Talmid Chacham and he can be matir your neder. If he causes you to regret, if you would have known that this and this is going to occur by making this neder, would you have made the neder? And you say no, so he uproots the neder. He's matir the neder. So Rav Eliezer says, since it's potential, a person can go to a chacham and undo the fact that he was mafresh this challah. So technically, it's as if it belongs to him again, and therefore you have to be worried about your rab, by your motzei. But Rav Yeshua said, we don't say this. Since you have the potential to undo it, we view it as if it's yours. Itmar. Famous Gemara. Right? The Yontif is Tuesday. Let's say Yontif was Monday and Tuesday. And I bake Tuesday for Wednesday, which is Chol. Rav Chizda Omer Loike. I get Malchus. I was Machal Yontif. I'm allowed to bake on Yontif for Yontif. Means you already ate your meal Tuesday noontime. Then you went ahead and baked again, and that's clearly for tomorrow, because there's no time left for you to eat. So it's clear that it's meant for tomorrow. You're loika because it says lo yisasa kol malach on Yontif. Rabba oimer eino loka. Rabba says you don't get malchus. We don't say hoyelu mikloile orchim chazile. There is a concept of hoyel mikloile orchim, meaning Tuesday, which is Pesach, which is Yontiv, and Wednesday is Chol. And I finish Tuesday, my lunch meal, and then I go into the kitchen again and start baking. Why? Because guests are going to show up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So since Hoyel and guests may come, they might need it today. That's why I don't get, Rav Chizah says we don't say Hoyel. And Rabbah says they like it because I'm reading Hoyel. This is the famous Hoyel de Rabbah. That if I cook or bake on Yontif, it's not a problem because it could be other guests will come. Rav Chizda. So Rabbah says a good kasha to Rav Chizda. You said we're not allowed to bake today in any fashion way. Well, how do we bake Friday? Let's say Yontif is Thursday, Friday. How are we baking Friday for Shabbos? If we don't, well, right now we're not there yet. L'chora, Rabbah is saying to Rav Chizda, if you don't use the concept of Hoyel, that maybe Friday afternoon guests are going to come. See, right now we're operating with Hoyel, and Rabbah holds of Hoyel. So he says to Rav Chizda, how could you bake Friday for Shabbos, Friday's Yontif, unless you use the principle of Hoyel? Right? We laid down on Wednesday a matzah and an egg prior to Yontif. And we're mitzaref that. So really we started preparing for Shabbos from Wednesday. That's how an Erev Tafshilin works. So Umishum Eruve Tafshilin, Sharina Nisri Deraisa. Understand, an Erev Tafshilin is a rabbinic construct. And I'm allowed to violate a Isser Deraisa on Yontif to cook for Shabbos? I don't understand that. Amr lei midaraisa tzorchei Shabbos nasin beyond. From strict Torah law, you're allowed to prepare on Yontif for Shabbos. Tichsiv, ach asher yachel chol nefesh v'Shabbos v'Yontif chade kedushihi the Tarvayu Shabbos Ikri. I'm reading Rashi. Kihechi the mutter levashal lebo b'yom mutter levashal lemocher. It says Shabbos and Yontif really have the same kedusha, and therefore, really, from a Raisadika point, you're allowed to cook on Friday Yontif for Shabbos, and therefore the rabbinic construct for on Wednesday Erev Tavshilin is just the rabbis made a gzeira. Rabbananu de Gazri be gzeira sheba yomru oifim Yontif af l'chol. So they made a gzeira. They were not allowed to cook on Yontif for Shabbos because people think you're allowed to cook on Yontif for a regular chol, a regular vachadik vach, a regular day. So that's really why there's a rabbinic prohibition to cook from Shabbos. Comes the Eruv Tavshilin to uproot that. The kivin da'atzach rabbanon Eruv Tavshilin islay hakeira. The Eruv Tavshilin, in essence, is a hecker for us to remember. Oh, you know what? Really, I'm allowed to cook from Shabbos to Yontif. Excuse me, from Yontif to Shabbos. And that really the only thing that's also is cooking from Yontif to Chol. And that's what the Erev Tavshilin accomplishes. Eitzvei. So on this, I'm going to ask you a kasha. Behema mesukenes. You have an animal. In the times of Chazal, an animal was a very high cost asset. You have an animal that's about to die. So you don't want to lose this asset. You have to have enough, you can shecht it quickly before it dies. Now again, you have to make sure it's not going to be a treifa. If it's a dying animal, if it's in danger, you got to shecht it in. It's on Yontif. You're allowed to shecht on Yontif. If it dies without shechita, you lost the whole thing. But you have to have enough time to eat at least a kazayas of this meat roasted while it's still daytime. Now, you notice it just say sheyachol, meaning yachol lechol afal gav deloy boy lemechol. It means even though he himself has eaten already, he doesn't have bishul l'didi, because I'm worried about orchim, the amri hoyel v'i boy lemechol matziyachol. Since you have hoyel and orchim may come mishamachi yishchol elodidcha, but you say you're not allowed to shech, you're not allowed to. We don't say hoyel, and he's already eaten. The amrit lo amrin hoyel amay yishchol. So who is he shechting for? He already ate. Amr le mishum hefsid mamoinoi. You know what? It's only a heter here because he's going to lose his money. Afraid to gemara mishum hefsid mamoinoi sharina nisur deraisa. Understand? It says lo sasa malacha. You're allowing to do nisur deraisa because of hefsid mammon. Amr le in. Because mishum hefsid mamoinoi gomer believe lechol kazayas. No. He was goymer in his heart that he's going to eat a kazayas of this meat because he doesn't want to lose the money. So it's not orchim, it's himself. He's shechting for himself, right? Now, even a kazay's basar you can't eat without shechting the animal. So that's how Rav Chisda learns. Okay, we're going to ask other steers on this sheet, on this sugi of hoyel is one of the most famous sugis in all of Shas. It's going to go on for quite a while. And we rely on this sugi of hoyel in many areas. Okay, any comments, questions, issues? No. Tomorrow,